Something a bit different. We're setting aside the deep analysis just for a moment and really focusing on the stories themselves. We've got this collection of sources detailing some really terrifying, genuinely disturbing experiences, true horror stories, actually. And they're all documented by people either working at or just visiting America's biggest superstore, Walmart, under those bright fluorescent lights.
Right. And our mission today, our deep dive, is really to pull together these, well, shocking anecdotes. We want to look past the sort of everyday chaos you expect in retail and try to understand the types of threats that bubble up in these huge, often kind of uncontrolled public spaces. We're basically mapping the line from the bizarrely unhinged behavior all the way to calculated and even deadly violence. It's a shortcut for you, really, to grasp the hidden darkness in these very familiar places.
Okay, let's dive in. First stop, Quincy, Massachusetts. A really chilling case of mistaken identity. Our source, a college student, she'd just parked her car, and this man approaches her. It wasn't just catcalling, though. He was aggressive, shouting "Allie" at her, talking like they knew each other, like there was some, bad history.
Yeah, she immediately told him, "You've got the wrong person."
But he didn't care, just wouldn't listen.
And that immediate certainty he had, that conviction, that's what's so unsettling right from the start. That misplaced familiarity, it's often the first step towards real danger. But this, as the source shows, wasn't just random harassment. It was shaping up to be something more organized. Vengeance, almost.
Absolutely, because a few days later she goes back, and this time the man is there again. But he's not alone. He's got others with him, a gang, and he is furious, cussing her out, screaming that she owes them a lot of money. She's tried to get away, obviously, but when she came back one last time, the whole group surrounded her. Right there in the parking lot, they even had their phones out, filming, threatening a public whooping. They were totally convinced she was this person they were hunting down.
This is where it just flips, though.
Mm-hmm.
From sheer terror to, well, relief, but also this profound shock. The police finally got involved, thankfully, and they explained the awful truth. Our narrator, she was mistaken for a woman named Allie. And this Allie, she was described as a lady of the night, involved in drugs, an addict.
And she looked exactly like the narrator.
Exactly. Same curly brown hair, brown eyes, even the smile, apparently. A twin.
And the reason they were after Allie...
She'd robbed her coke-dealing boss, and then, tragically, she'd overdosed on fentanyl. She was already dead.
So this gang, ready for serious violence, right outside a Walmart entrance. They were looking for a dead woman's double to settle a drug debt.
It just throws into sharp relief how organized crime, local gang stuff, it can thrive in that semi-anonymous chaos of a huge retail parking lot.
And the only reason she wasn't seriously hurt.
A very large, very quick-thinking Walmart security guard. He physically had to pull her out of that circle.
He saved her, called the cops, calmed her down while she was crying. Incredible presence of mind.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? If you, just by chance, look exactly like someone caught up in serious criminal trouble. How safe are you, really, in a public space that's built on high volume and, well, anonymity? The fact that a security guard had to physically intervene to stop a filmed beating in broad daylight, it says a lot about how fragile civility can be in those environments.
Okay, so if the Ally case shows us that kind of calculated local violence, our next story shifts inside the store, and it shows just sheer, unbridled mental breakdown. This one comes from a loss prevention worker, LP. He actually says he hates his job.
Why is that?
Because he says he constantly sees the worst in people.
Yeah. We often think of loss prevention as just catching shoplifters, right? Glorified monitors. But the sources, time and again, they show LP dealing directly with severe mental health crises, with homelessness, addiction. They're often the first responders, sometimes the only responders, to truly desperate acts.
And that's exactly what happened here. The narrator spots this guy, balding, blue shirt, just standing completely still in the meat aisle, staring into the refrigerated units, just staring with this really dead look in his eyes, unblinking.
Creepy.
Yeah. So the narrator approaches cautiously, and the man smiles at him. But it's this wide, disturbing grin because the man has absolutely no teeth, just diseased-looking gums.
Oh, man, that visual alone is, wow.
But it's what he does next that makes this about grotesque desperation, not just, trying to steal something. It gets really sensory here. The man picks up a big sirloin steak, still in the plastic wrap. He takes this long, deep sniff through the plastic, like he's really savoring the smell. Then, without breaking eye contact with the LP guy, he just rips off the plastic and immediately shoves the whole raw, thick steak into his mouth.
Oh, raw.
Raw. He's straining his jaws, trying to, and the source says, mush that thick piece of meat up with his bare gums.
Oh.
His eyes rolled back, his cheeks were caving in, and he was making these deep, guttural moaning noises, just trying to swallow this raw piece of meat whole.
That's incredibly disturbing. So what happened? LP had to step in?
Yeah, the LP worker had to subdue him. And the investigation afterward, it gave some context, but it's pretty sobering.
Let me guess. Mental health issues?
Exactly. He was a known mental patient, apparently off his meds, probably lost his teeth through neglect over time, an older guy.
So not a monster, just someone deeply unwell, suffering.
Right, but here's the rub. He was also a known repeat retail theft offender. This was his 4th offense.
Ah. So the system sees the crime, not necessarily the crisis driving it.
Precisely. He wasn't stealing it to sell later. He was trying to eat it. Right there, raw, which is a huge difference in intent, you'd think.
Yeah, absolutely. Does the source talk about that challenge? That LP has to essentially treat a mental health emergency as a criminal act?
It does. It highlights how the system just isn't set up for this. Because it was his 4th strike, he was charged with felony retail theft.
Which likely means prison, not treatment.
Probably. And it just underscores that the danger LP faces isn't always calculated malice. Sometimes it's the desperate, frankly grotesque actions of people who've completely fallen through the cracks, using the supermarket as this final chaotic refuge.
A really grim picture of the intersection between retail and social failure.
Okay, so we've seen unpredictable madness in the parking lot, quiet desperation in the aisles. Now we need to turn to the cold, calculated threats, mass violence, the kind that just shatters the everyday routine of shopping.
Yeah, we're shifting now from individual crisis to something much wider.
Yeah.
Catastrophic, random, social danger.
We're going to Thornton, Colorado, November 1st, 2017. Our narrator here was an employee, just chatting with a coworker, Miguel, waiting to clock out. Pretty normal end to a shift. But then they noticed this man, and he just looked wrong. Pale, sickly, gaunt cheeks. The narrator actually says his face looked like a skull, just thinly covered with skin.
You get that sometimes, don't you, that feeling? The sources often emphasize that sense of palpable wrongness about someone. In these busy places, we kind of train ourselves to ignore most people, right?
Yeah, blend into the background.
But this guy, he apparently demanded attention just by how strange he seemed.
And the next few seconds just unfolded in this horrifying slow motion. The man reached into his jacket pocket, and the narrator saw it. That glint of polished metal. He pulled out a handgun, raised it quickly, and fired, just like that. An unsuspecting customer nearby immediately collapsed. The narrator describes just a total shutdown, frozen, sheer terror.
Understandable. Completely understandable.
But thank God for Miguel, her coworker. He reacted instantly, grabbed the narrator hard, dragged them both behind this big display of kitchen appliances.
Smart move. Quick thinking under unimaginable pressure.
They crouched there. The shots just kept ringing out, deafening. She described hearing the crack sound, the sound of, quote, high-speed pieces of lead breaking the sound barrier inches away from them.
Just inches. The randomness of who lives and who dies in those situations.
Total chaos ensued. They eventually managed to flee through an emergency exit, scrambled out into the cold night, only to find 2 small children standing there alone, crying, desperately asking where their father was.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. Just awful.
The shooter, 48-year-old Scott Ostrom, he was eventually caught, convicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder.
And the sentence reflected the horror. 3 life sentences plus another 48 years. The judge, quite rightly, said Ostrom had a black and malignant heart, fatally bent on spreading fear, misery, and death.
What's truly terrifying about Thornton, though, reading the source, is the lack of any clear motive. How does a public place, how do we deal with violence that seems completely random, detached from any grievance or goal?
That is the core problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
The source mentions his sister said he was never the same after trying LSD back in the 80s, but there was no specific target, no vendetta against Walmart or the victims. The violence was just unleashed like a contagion.
Yeah.
Really reinforces that awful idea.
Yeah.
In any busy, relatively low-security public space, you are, to some extent, always vulnerable to the random, senseless malice of a stranger.
Okay. From random mass violence, we now shift focus again, this time to something more deliberate. Organized horror near the U.S.-Mexico border in Nogales, Arizona. This is where bigger geopolitical violence spills right into the suburban shopping trip.
Right. The location itself changes the whole risk assessment. A Walmart in Nogales isn't just dealing with shoplifting or the kinds of incidents we've discussed so far. They're on the front line, essentially, dealing with the potential fallout of cartel operations, smuggling, And the grim possibility of, well, violent disputes being settled very publicly on U.S. soil.
And this account comes from a security guard, working third shift, pitch black outside, parking lot totally deserted.
Yeah.
He spots this old, beat-up Ford sedan, parked way out, all by itself, middle of the empty lot. Odd.
Definitely odd. Middle of the night.
And the driver,
Yep.
just sitting there, perfectly still.
So the guard uses the CCTV, which has night vision, zooms in, and notices the driver's wearing sunglasses.
At night, in a pitch-black parking lot.
Yeah, that's a classic red flag. Something's wrong.
He tries calling out, maybe honking the security cart horn, gets no response. So he has to walk out there, approach the car, taps on the window. He shines his flashlight inside and just sees blood everywhere. The description in the source is, frankly, sickening. He says things that should have been inside this dude were fester on the car's floor. And he notes specifically, the man's eyes had apparently been taken.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's cartel signature stuff. Brutal. Meant as a message.
Exactly. The police arrived quickly, confirmed immediately, cartel-related incident.
This wasn't random. It was a disposal.
Yep.
A gruesome, terrifying warning left in a very public, very American space.
Makes you ask, how does that level of targeted, sophisticated, imported violence change how security has to operate in those border zones?
And what does it mean for the average shopper just filling up their car with groceries a few hours later in that same spot, utterly unaware?
It means the store itself, just because of where it is, becomes this potential stage for international horror and the
Yeah.
impact on the guard. The source says he was previously completely uninterested in guns, never owned one.
And
Now he carries a .38 caliber handgun while he's on the job every night. That's the personal cost, the psychological toll of working near that kind of threat.
we've covered chaos, desperation, random violence, organized crime spillover. Now, let's look at maybe the most disturbing category. The monsters who hide in plain sight, behind masks of normalcy.
Yeah, this one's tough. We're going to Rincon, Georgia. And it starts with a store manager trying to save a bit of money before Christmas. He hired a local guy, Elwin, to be the store's Santa Claus. Why? Because Elwin offered to do the job for free.
Oh boy, that's a failure right there. Prioritizing budget over basic vetting, especially for a role involving direct, unsupervised contact with kids.
And apparently Elwin was terrible even just at the job itself. The source says he was grumpy, scowled all the time. He actually upset the children who came to see Santa, sucked at his job.
Not exactly the festive spirit.
Not at all. Then, less than a week before Christmas, Elwin just stops showing up, vanishes. The staff are mostly just annoyed. Figured he was flaky, irresponsible.
Understandable given his performance.
But then, a few days later, they see a news article. And there's his face. Elwin Crocker. The headline. It said Elwin and his family were being questioned because his children were missing.
Oh no. You know where this is going. The dread.
The shock for those staff members must have been immense. The police investigation. It revealed something truly unspeakable.
What did they find?
The children. They were found buried. In the family's backyard. Under just a few feet of dirt.
Oh my God.
And before they died, they'd been subjected to unimaginable cruelty. The report said they were beaten, abused, and forced to live in a cage in the backyard.
Living in a cage while their father played Santa at Walmart.
He used that volunteer Santa job, leveraging all the trust that comes with it, especially during the holidays. He used it as a cover, a shield for his horrific crimes.
I'm the manager who hired him to save a few dollars.
Fired, as he should have been. For exposing the community's children to a predator through sheer negligence, that symbol of Christmas cheer twisted into a terrifying disguise for pure evil.
Sometimes the system failures are just as horrifying as the crimes themselves, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, our last account, Mount Dora, Florida. And this one is maybe the most heartbreaking conclusion of all. It starts with some teenagers. They're hanging out, maybe smoking, in a dark corner of the Walmart parking lot late at night. They notice this car, an old, 1987 Cadillac sedan. And it's filthy. But not just messy. It's completely filled, floor to ceiling almost, with trash. And the smell. The source says it reeked aggressively of old milk and rotten meat.
Just the description of the car itself paints a picture of extreme neglect. A mobile garbage heap.
So the narrator, one of the teens, sees movement inside, amongst all the garbage. Curiosity, maybe a bit of fear, gets the better of him. He goes closer, wipes some grime off the window to see inside.
And what does he see?
He sees what he instantly perceives as a monster. He describes a creature with pale, scaly skin. This thing pushes its grubby claws against the window, smiles at him, and then licks its lips.
A creature. What on earth?
They freaked out, ran away. genuinely believing they'd encountered some kind of inhuman fiend lurking in the trash-filled car.
And that right there, that's the absolute tragedy. Real-world horror masquerading as something out of a nightmare.
Because the next morning, the news reported what was found in that Cadillac.
Let me guess. Not a monster.
Not a monster.
Yeah.
3 severely neglected children found living amidst the garbage. Their parents were addicts.
Oh, God. The creature he saw was a child.
Yes, and the scales he described. The source heartbreakingly reveals they were actually second-degree burns.
For birds. How?
From spilled hot coffee, apparently, left untreated. Their skin was ravaged by filth, injuries. The conditions were so bad, a terrified teenager literally perceived a suffering child as a monster.
That level of neglect is almost incomprehensible. To dehumanize a child to that extent through sheer indifference.
The narrator's reflection on this, it really sums up this whole deep dive perfectly. He says, the things that we really should be afraid of aren't the fiends that haunt our imaginations,
But the monsters we create in reality through gluttony, sloth, and indifference. Powerful.
Yeah. So we started looking at what seemed like isolated incidents, didn't we? But the thread connecting them all is this constant potential for danger, for desperation, for hidden horror, all taking place in the most mundane, everyday American settings.
Exactly. These stories really prove that the most disturbing threats, they often hide in plain sight. They leverage the anonymity, the sheer volume of people in these huge public spaces. So, maybe something for you to think about. Reflect on the nature of real-world horror versus the fictional kind. The next time you walk into one of those brightly lit stores, just consider the silent, unseen battles, the hidden struggles that might be happening all around you.
ว่าเราอยู่กันมันปันกันไปของกันกันกันกันกันกันยิงกันก่อนกันปันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันพับปันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกันกัน